So I thought I would just quickly share this technique that I use for chording things, especially jazz tunes, that helps me kind of hear some of the chord tones and the movement of the chord tones, especially we're talking about, like with Autumn Leaves, we're talking about flat 13s and flat nines and all this other stuff. They're part of the common vocabulary of jazz, but it's kind of hard to get your mind around them if you can't hear what those notes are. So this is kind of how I play a lot of chords. And I grabbed a 4-string bass because I know you guys are playing fours. Like typically I'm doing this on a 6-string, and so I have more options in terms of how I can voice things. But you can totally get away with these so-called rootless voicings, just 3-note voicings, and they sound good. And once you sort of get used to hearing them without the roots, your mind kind of supplies the root. That's one benefit to being a bass player. We tend to think and hear things in terms of root motion. So like you don't really even need to be playing with someone else who's providing the roots to kind of hear where these things are going. So anyways, really quickly, the first chord is an A minor 7, right? I just play kind of like an extension of that starting from the third. So I play a C, right? That's the third of the A minor chord. Then I play a G, which is the 7th of the A minor chord. And then I play a B. So it looks like just like a regular C major 7 chord, root 5th and 7th. But I'm actually playing this against presumably an A in the bass, right? Like you can hear that. Or if I play it here. So I'm just playing that chord. That is my so-called minor chord rootless voicing. And like if I were playing a G minor, right, I would just do the same off B flat. You just move it, you move this shape basically a minor third above your root, and you get your minor 7 chord. So that's my minor 7 chord. And then here's the cool thing. The D7 7 chords are hard to voice without sounding corny somehow, especially on a bass, because and especially a 4-string bass, because if you're playing a root, you at most have 3 other notes you can add in there, and then for a 7th chord, typically you want the 7th in there, you want the 3rd in there, you want all the things that characterize a dominant 7th chord. But if you have to throw in some other color tone, like a 13th or something like that, it's really hard to voice, especially on a 4-string bass. So again, this rootless voicing approach, here's how I voice a dominant 7th chord. So that was my first chord, my A minor 7, which really just looks like a C major 7. All I do is I bring my pinky note down half step. And you can see what I'm doing here, rootless voicing. That C is the 7th of the D7 chord. This F sharp is the 3rd of the D7 chord. And up here, there's the magic note, the B, which is the 13th. And so if I free myself of having to worry about the root, like if I were playing just the standard kind of here's the root 3rd, 7th version of a D7 chord, that's what it sounds like, and it's kind of corny. If I just play it this way, it's kind of cooler sounding, and you might be able to tell that like I'm actually playing a note that's in the melody of Autumn Leaves, right? It's the 13th of that D7 chord. And if I add the root, you'll hear it. You can hear that it's a very sweet chord, and it's that 13th that's giving it that extra color as opposed to just a straight up, like voicing like that. So again, first chord, A minor 7. Second chord is the D7. That all these are rootless voicings. I'm voicing it 7th, 3rd, 13th, right? The final chord is again a rootless voicing of a G major 7th, and I'm just playing it like almost like a B minor chord, right? B, F sharp, and A. In relation to the G major 7th, that's the 3rd, the 7th, and the 9th. So again, I'm getting a little extra mileage. You can hear that's the root. Or I can play it here, right? So the whole sequence is that's the 2-5-1. If you just learn that little thing, it'll help your ear kind of hear some of these color tones, like this 13th. And one of the questions that was brought up is, well, why does it say flat 13th? Well, let's look at it. D7, there's my 7th, there's my 3rd, there's my regular 13th. That's a B. Well, if I want to hear a flat 13th, what do? I lower that B to a B flat. Right? So A minor 7, there's just a regular D7. There's a D7 with a flat 13, and look, that goes right into the G. You can hear it. Flat 13, one chord. If you just learn that little sequence and learn to move it around the neck, let's say, okay, now we're in G. Right? If you just learn to kind of move this thing around and use it as kind of your basis for a major 2-5-1 shape, you'll start to hear some of these tones a lot more, like 13ths, minor 7 flat 5, up to another, a dominant 7 with a sharp 9. Like if you start approaching these chords as like rootless voicings and start thinking about that special note that's called out on the chart, like the flat 13 or the sharp 9, even on a 4-string bass, you'll be able to start hearing those tones without having to kind of build a chord from the root up. You'll just have a lot more options, and you'll start to really hear how these notes move from one to another as the chords move from one to another, and it's pretty cool. So hopefully that's of some help. I think it might answer some of the questions people have been asking and things that I've tried to get my ears wrapped around when dealing with the chart and chromaticism and color tones like 9ths and 13ths. It just, at the end of the day, if you can just play some rudimentary chords, simple shapes, 3 notes, if you can do that and then hear the root motion underneath, as most bass players probably will be able to do. That's what we're good at. I think it'll just help when you encounter like a chart that has like some kind of, fancy note in it, like a flat 13th, sharp 9s, what have you. Anyways, hope that's helpful. Bye.